for Dying Light 1 and 2. This is actually going to be more a focus on the latest mod tools that I'm working on for the Dying Light game, and that comes in the form of the new mod tool that I'm calling the Infinity Designer, which the Infinity Designer is named after the fact that after looking through the code over the last several years now, going on almost 2 years, I've noticed that there's been a ton of variation inside the files, and there's a ton of data in here that you could actually use for the Dying Light 2 game, but it wasn't utilized. I guess it was utilized to some degree, but they really didn't dive into a lot of the different ways that players could create new content or create new players, new companions, new NPCs, new factions, new uniforms, etc., for the game. So I did go and reverse engineer the asset management side of Dying Light 2. So I brought that into Unity 3D, which is what you're seeing here in the background. And I've written my own character creator tools, which are completely data driven. So the whole point of this is that everything is data driven straight from the game, straight from Dying Light 2. And the whole point here is that by doing that, you'll be able to inject the content back into the game seamlessly without having to worry about custom content. Now, what does that mean in the future? Well, in the future, if you wanted to create custom textures, custom meshes for the game, then this could be a great way to test your textures, test the different parts that you're trying to modify, and then inject them into the game without having to actually go and launch the game. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing some links, and I'm going to continue to work on this. If you guys have any questions or you want to just come hang out and ask about the mod, happy to discuss, and I'm going to keep working. So welcome back if you're returning, and I'll kind of explain some things as I'm going, but let's make sure that I get some links posted here before we deep dive too much. Let me also do an audio check really quick. I'm going, but let's make sure. Okay. Sounds okay. So let's go ahead and share this out. All right. So now that I've gotten that shared, I'll go ahead and add here. And it looks like, I'm always curious because it's like half my tools say that I've set up the stream correctly. I feel like an old man when I talk about this stuff, but essentially it says I've done everything correctly, but then when I'm sharing the link, I see that it's actually using the wrong information. So I'm not sure why that is, but let me move this to this other screen here so I'm able to actually modify some things here. I'm currently using OBS. If anybody's familiar with the different streaming tools and that kind of thing, please let me know if you have any recommendations for setting that stuff up, because I swear to God, I've set this multiple times inside the OBS and that kind of thing, and then I hit up, I hit play and YouTube takes over. So let's go ahead. Because it won't even let me change my image, I don't think. Here we go. Because it's using the old outdated one. Let's get that updated so people know what the hell I'm talking about today. And then we'll get going. All right. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit so you guys can see kind of the updates of where we've gone. So earlier in the week, I showcased some of the work, which was essentially just an extension of the model loader, which there's two parts of this. So the first is like actually loading all of the character data from the game. So I do have it set up to where you can actually go in here and load all of the different characters inside the game. So let me switch to that really quick. So I've left that code alone, and basically what I'm going to do is all of this is intertwined in the sense that as I improve different materials and different things that are set up, both will get better because both are parsing and loading the data from the same place, which is the JSON data. So when we go in here and we select this category, it basically is just giving me a bunch of different JSON names, and it's not very elegant right now, but the idea is that it then grabs all of the JSON data from that I've compiled from the game. So I've gone and created custom JSON data from the game itself, and then I'm able to load that JSON data onto the Unity engine. And one of the things that I've been fighting with is I went and I wrote custom shaders for Unity to import all of their asset management data, such as the textures, and then recreate the materials. And one of the things that's interesting is that I actually really like this this way of doing models. And I'm interested to learn more about how they're doing it at Techland. But the idea here is that instead of creating a diffuse map that's kind of set in stone, so you can create like a texture that would be absolutely hard coded to where you wouldn't be able to make any changes to that unless you use like actual editing software. They're using an index that uses a gradient, and then it applies that gradient to the material. And so let me show you guys what that looks like. So essentially, I know I'm kind of in the way here, but essentially in my shader, I've got it set up to where I can go in here and scale and change the way that this is applied. And the cool part about this is that you'll actually see it while I'm scrolling, is that immediately changes the color that's actually on the model. Some of these are actually getting dynamically created through the data that they're actually setting up inside the model files. And when I'm loading the different models using the model viewer, it's actually loading those values and trying to apply some of that. But for the most part, I'm having to go in there and basically kind of rough these out based on what I think they look like in the game. I was hoping that they would be a global value in the sense that if I set this once in the shader, that it would kind of apply to all the different meshes and materials, but it ended up not working out that way. So the end result is that as you're loading these in, some of the models right now will load in materials that will have slightly strange colors. That's actually what I'm working on here, kind of slowly but surely, is going through, because this is an instantiated version of the different files. So this is not the actual model or prefab and materials. These are the instantiated version. And so because of that, I kind of have to go in here to each one of these things. I know this is kind of geeking out a little bit here, but essentially the idea is that as I go through and I uncover like, oh, okay, this is set up this way, or this slight alteration needs to be made to this, I have to go onto each one of the materials and make that change or apply that change down to that material, because otherwise if I hit the load or the unload and the load button again, it will essentially just wipe this data out, or these manual changes that I've made, because all of it's just being instantiated when it loads. And so if we hit unload and load again, you can see now it's kind of a gray material. And that's where I didn't copy over the exact value. So as I'm scrolling this again, I realize that my body's kind of in the way here. So as I'm scrolling these values, you can actually see the material change and update over here in the preview, but not on the model itself. So if I reload him in, he'll actually be changed. So anyway, that's a quick summary of the model loader. It is basically my way of immediately pulling in all of the different JSON data and be able to determine whether or not most of it is broken or most of it is working or not. And so when you're going to the things like the Banshee and the different characters inside the game, you can start to see very quickly, like, are these materials getting set up correctly? Are they breaking? And if they're not, if they're good to go, then I can actually move over more to what I'm doing now, which is the actual character creation side. So the model viewing side is fun and all, but the character creation is actually the part that is the super exciting part of this project. So if we load back up the character designer, so what I've tried to do is for a very early stage, I'm just kind of trying to get as much data onto the menus as possible. When I release this, it'll be a lot cleaner. There's this one challenge where essentially the dot model is hard-coded to a certain number of slots. And actually, while I'm at it, let me do one more thing really quickly. I apologize. Let me actually show this one more time. Okay. All right. All right, let's dive back in. So the idea or the principle here is that for the early stage, I just want to get all the data on here. As I was mentioning, the actual models themselves, so the dot model files are actually hard-coded to have a specific number of slots. Now, I haven't tried to flex the number of slots to just make up slots or the concept of slots because the amount of editing that went into models was very tedious. And so I'll actually bring up a example of what that looks like. So here's an example of the player. Let's actually do one of the PK or something. That'll be a little bit easier to see kind of how crazy these files get very quickly. So essentially the idea is that I've been writing all of these by hand previously, and anytime you make a syntax error, you pretty much have to crawl through hand by or line by line and figure out what you did wrong. And so, but the concept was there, right? So essentially, they're setting up a reference to a mesh, and they're setting up references to materials. And so, because all of that's getting loaded in with an index, that's where the idea of my character creator came from. Was okay, if all of this is getting dynamically parsed and loaded by the engine, Eureka, that's really easy. All I have to do is write these. And so I've been writing these. So to date, currently, I Am Legion has around 1,700 new models in it that I've created based on original variations or slight changes. As I mentioned in a previous video, I had to be very careful because anytime I made a slight change, like for example, you do a search and replace on these files, and what you end up with is a slight typo that gets injected into 1,000 files, and then you actually don't realize it because you're making so many changes at once that you end up with a bunch of model files that don't actually work due to a small syntax error. So I did end up writing my own syntax tools in Python that would go through and actually try to find the errors to kind of help clean this up. But even with that, you're basically hard coding every single one of these. So the idea is that, I apologize, is that each one of these kind of has a torso part or a name or an identifier that if you go through each one of these, they have a designator of where on the body they're getting placed and what role they're serving for that model. Well, the idea here is that instead of having to actually go through these material resources, first you have the material data, that's the original data, and then you have the slight modifiers that are getting applied to the material resources. Instead of having to manually code that, that's where this tool comes in. So the idea is instead of creating this by hand, you're now creating this through this tool. So each one of those is parsed and set up and then categorized. So the biggest part of the code, and actually the hackiest part of the code, was actually creating the vast amount of JSON data needed to pull off the system, where everything has to be itemized and characterized and categorized. And so that's taken probably the most work this week so we're on, I think this is about day 8 that I've been working on this. But the idea is that each thing has to be sorted into different groups. The end result of that is that I'm utilizing the streaming assets folder inside of Unity so that the end result of all of this will be JSON data that I can actually update in the future. So if you write all of this to where it's data driven, and you write all this to where everything is exposed to where your streaming assets can be updated, essentially I can release a version of this application out to where users can actually update their streaming assets, or I can actually, similar to the launcher that I've written, actually create update packages that pull the latest version of the streaming assets, which is actually the whole point of using some of Unity's tools. So Unity actually has that built in as well, to where these will get updated in the future. And so I am looking at that as well, so that users never have to update anything and I don't have to write anything separate. It will just pull the latest and greatest version of the data each time. But the idea is that it utilizes a combination of, for example, with the JSON data, I'm generating a JSON for every single character inside the game, including the ones that I've created. And so as you go through here, you can actually review all the different changes that I've made to all the different models. But if I'm parsing and updating one of these JSONs, basically what I did is I took the JSON, or I took my parser and set it up to where it's basically extracting the critical information that I want to use, and then it's removing the other data that I don't find as important. And when it's going there, or when it's going through there, it's basically utilizing all of this very important data that I've deemed important, and it's using that information inside the system. The best part of that is that as it's serialized and deserialized into the engine, I can actually parse this and export this result back out. And I know that that's probably doesn't mean anything to you guys necessarily, but what that means to me is the fact that if all of this is data driven and it can import the data, it can export the data. Which means the game can read it. So everything that's going to be shown is all led by references to their meshes, their materials, their textures. I haven't modified any of that so that everything that's being written in the future, so that when I go and I write back out, I write the JSON files back out, and those eventually get turned into the .model files. It will be able to just update the lines as necessary so that my JSON turns into this .model and then immediately goes back in the game. So the idea is that, so I got as far as I could this week. Next week when I start back up, the next phase of this will be actually exporting and also assignment to slots. So, just go ahead and dive in to the interface. Like I said, this is just to get a really simple interface across the finish line so that you guys can kind of see the power of using a system like this. So the first one, you've got the player. And I really wanted to split these out for now because there is this they've set this culling material for the player that some people are aware of that basically makes it to where the transparency layers are set to always visible for player items. This is true of player weapons as well. So if you add a player weapon to an NPC, you can see that weapon across the map on an NPC waving it around because of the culling that they've set up for the material. Well, that sucks, because the challenge that I am going to run up against with this program is that whatever I output, if it's not player specific, if it is any of the other categories, you will potentially have some clipping issues until I continue to reach out to Techland. I've already reached out to them multiple times. I've already asked them about it. I've asked them for help. I've asked to try to review what's different. Currently, I am aware of the fact that I think the difference is that you have a first person material, you have a third person material. Technically, if I can figure out how to inject materials back into the game, I can solve for the culling, I think, but I'm going to continue to look into that. Anyway, this first category is player, because everything that's set here will not have that issue in theory. So everyone that is loaded into here, and Aiden is currently missing from this category, but everyone that loads into this technically has been set up with a material that does not have this issue. And so you can use this first area to go and create an entire character that in theory should have no issues with clipping whatsoever. So immediately the idea behind the system was that I wanted to try to give similar power to the player, similar to any other game that you play, where you immediately be able to at least understand a rough of what the game engine itself is going to create. So I'm not able to import the material data from the actual game, as that's not revealed. You can actually pull some of it when you get the ASCII files, but instead of trying to waste time trying to replicate the data coming out of the engine, I'm approximating the data so that you get the rough idea of what this character will look like, so that when you load him into the game, hopefully he'll look even better, is kind of the hope. So you can go through here. I've set up the idea of multiple hairs. This isn't too impressive right now because the player models are limited compared to, say, the male and female. So if we get this issue fixed in the future, you'll have a lot more options here that are available to the for the player category. But let's continue to dive in. Also today, this was my big accomplishment, my big win for today, is the variation slider. So, and this was probably my biggest thing and reason for creating the system, is that I was aware of the amount of variation that was available on the back end that you could not immediately get access to in the vanilla game. Which was super frustrating. And so because of that, I wanted to write a system that would be able to apply that variation very quickly, so that you could actually enjoy some of that variation on your player. And to show off an example of that, so you apply like a tattoo. Right now, the reason for the transparency is that you have the concept. They didn't do full body meshes due to clipping of the different clothing pieces. And so the idea here is that you're basically getting multiple pieces, that I wanted to give you as many options as possible so that you kind of snap all the pieces together. It won't always work out perfect with every piece, and so that's the idea behind something like the slider, is to be able to go in there and make changes as you see fit. And if you like it, if you think it's good enough, then I agree with you. And so as long as you can export the one that you want to play, that's all that mattered here. So I actually really enjoyed this cape. I haven't seen this cape very often inside the game, but I did know that it was available inside the files. I'm going to try to reach out to Techland to basically get their blessing or get their thoughts on utilizing the different pieces that are all in the game. So everything that is getting added for DLC content that players are buying are all part of the base game. So they're not actually releasing that as separate content. The problem with that is that it becomes harder to flag what is what is vanilla and what is custom content. And so I'm having to kind of go through and rule out some things by site, essentially. But I will try to reach out to them and kind of get their blessing or their sign off to make sure that they don't try to cease and desist on something that releases their DLC content or paid content without their approval. So This is also the kind of the part that I thought was kind of funny, is that I actually was watching a live stream that Techland put on, and one of the things I thought was so interesting is that they made the statement that everything, that the models that they were putting out and everything were all one piece, that you couldn't that they weren't going to release it into individual pieces, because that was something that somebody asked about or requested. And Timon mentioned you can't do that at this time. You know, they're all one piece. And I'm sitting there going like, huh, okay. Because they're all separate pieces that are dynamically combined in the engine. That's what actually has me so excited about the engine, is the fact that it can do that. So I'm not sure kind of what their thoughts are on that, or what they're going to try to do, you know, in the future with that system. But I think one of my favorite things about this is that you'll be able to very quickly go in and create a character that uses all of these different pieces to get whatever look and feel or vibe you're going for your character on your playthrough that you're feeling. And so I've tried to leave all of those options open. So if there's a mesh or model inside the game, then I've got it here. And again, these are all extracted from the base game, and so nothing is pirated or nothing is pulled out of any files that are not available to everyone. This is what everybody has access to. So there's also an issue that I'm trying to look into where I am trying to write a dynamic boning skeleton system. So that will probably be an update next week as well. I'll probably start the week with that. And what that means is that it's one of the things that actually turned me on to their system from the start, was the fact that they basically are binding, dynamically building skeletons as things are loaded. And so I'm going to actually do the same system. So everything will be bound to a skeleton, and the end result of that will be that you will be able to actually see animations. You'll be able to see different things actually play out on your characters. Now, whether or not I'm going to try to go all the way and have like actual facial animations and that kind of thing, we'll see. But I think one of my favorite things that I've been thinking of lately is that this idea of being able to go and actually take a snapshot of your avatar and share it. And so this will be a actual social thing as well. So when this launches, the idea is that there'll be a component of this where you can see what other people have created, and you can share that as well. So if you actually want to go and create, you know, some really awesome characters, you can go and share those on the public site. And essentially, again, the best part of that is that it's just JSON data. So everything will get pulled in, and players will be able to immediately load those files if they exist in the base game. So that will be more challenging in the future once custom textures, custom models come into it. But using some of the base game stuff, that shouldn't be a problem. So I haven't been able to show off a lot of the variation stuff just yet, just due to the amount of limited opportunities there are for the player. Again, with that clipping issue, but we'll continue to dial it up and continue to build out this character. So there are a very large number of items inside this game with a very large number of variations. It has taken a while to go through here and actually hook up all of the different materials that are getting loaded in, and I can show you guys what that actually looks like. So as these are getting loaded, because it's loading the JSON data, it actually informs me. So my code just lets me know, you know, there was a material that tried to get applied that doesn't exist. And essentially all that means is that I go and give it the exact name that it's looking for, and it's fixed. And so there is some tedious work that goes into basically just sitting here creating the different references, the links between all the different materials. And as those are added, it basically gets better and better as we go. So here you can see, here's another example of all the different meshes and models in here. Did they create variations for these? I don't think they did. Ooh, there's some fun ones for this one. I have not actually gone through and looked at all the variations yet, so that's kind of the best part, is that, so to show off, so I'm continuing to write editor scripts. Probably my favorite one for this project, and something that I'm going to look at selling on the Unity store, is that I've had to write a custom prefab material texture and a shader hookup script that works in your editor, to where the idea is that it basically goes through and it creates materials based on the available textures. It then tries to actually decide whether those are skin, whether those are cloth, based on my shaders. And then it also has the ability to where I can go in there and basically say like fix white materials. There's naming errors in this code. There's all sorts of things in here that lead to the materials not properly having all of the references that they need. So instead of having to handwrite every single one of those, what I've been trying to do is write better code that allows it to automatically hook those up. So for example, when you have a custom shader and you have specific slots, it will actually try to get the name of the texture, and then it will try to assign through my custom shader each texture as it goes. And I can say that there are about 10,000 materials that I'm working with right now, and that's only for the characters and for the player. That's nothing else from the game, like the actual buildings and textures for the actual world and that kind of thing. So they went full experience on the design for the different characters here, and that's what I've been trying to actually get access to, because I greatly appreciate that system that they wrote. And so this should allow, the idea behind these kinds of things is that as updates come out, the whole system is designed to where I can update this in the future by running a single script, putting in the new files, and if need be, run a couple of these scripts, and that's all I have to do for future updates. There's some additional things that I'll share in future discussions about the amount of work that had to go into like Photoshop and some of the other resources that had to be set up to actually properly handle some of the textures, but those are a little less exciting, so we won't dive into those right now. As I was mentioning earlier, I basically am still trying to decide how these different assets are added to the different sliders. Eventually they won't be sliders, so eventually the plan is to have these set up to where these are actual pictures of different items, and build this out like a full character creator. So you can go in there, instead of having to drag a slider and look at all the faces, you could actually filter or look at the different faces very quickly in the menu, so you're not having to sit there and basically dial through all these different options, because there's a colossal ton of options. The torsos and everything. So basically what that, I guess where I was going with that is that I'm trying to set this up to where there will be some overlap, but you can kind of decide, as I was mentioning earlier, what you're comfortable with as far as reasonable overlap. So if you want to go in there and create a torso that doesn't exist in the game by combining a bunch of files, that's kind of the power of doing a system like this. And when I released the code for creating NPCs. So the first part of this is to release it so that players can create their new player and companion, but also this is for myself and other modders as well who want to create new factions, new enemies, like this guy right here. If I tried to make this guy writing on that .model file, it would have taken probably an hour, if not more, to sit here and piece together and then test every single line. And that's the benefit of having these types of tools, to be able to just do this very quickly. So if we want to continue forward with this guy, did they add variation to this? I think that's the Nutcracker. There we go. We'll combine the samurai with the actual armor plating. I actually really like that. If Eric's on the line, thank you for fixing the link. Not sure if you're here or not, but I really appreciate it. So then we've created the torso. There is a slight variation there, but I think the difference between that is basically they have one for first person and they have one for third person. So then finally, I've also got an additional one that allows you this additional accessory. So if you want to try to add some additional accessories onto your model, kind of similar to the Sims, you can continue to add things based on what's available. that's basically how they're setting up a lot of the stuff in the back end, is that all of it's bound by different slots. And so because of that, in the future, I'm going to try to set this up to where there's an association. So that's another thing that I'm going to try to tackle this week is dependencies. So how do you use something? And again, it's about filtering thousands and thousands and thousands of files without having to do any work, right? I don't want to manually hook up any of this. This is an entire game's worth of content. So because of that, how can you use certain key terms to actually go and create associations? And let me show you guys the nightmare code that I wrote for my model parser. So this is actually some of the filter code that I've been writing, that basically this goes and has a yes, do this if you get this term, and then exclude filters that say if you have this term, don't add it because of this. And I've had to go in there and basically add all sorts of small little, do this because I say so conditions as well, because there's a bunch of typos in this code. It drives me crazy. If I was actually on this team, I would be upset at Techland. I would be upset with the development team just because of the amount of typos that I found in the materials and in the textures. I mean, my God. This is where Python or something needs to come into play to just check associations between all your naming conventions to make sure you don't have, half of your things have a typo that's going to cause some issue in the future. That's the end of my rant, but seriously, let me show you an example just while I'm on my rant here. So you have all these different naming conventions for all these different items, right? So you have hats, you've got headwear. One of my favorite ones is you have all these different types of headwear, right? But what if you had headwear, which is a typo, that basically now all of these models, they don't get their textures or their materials because of a typo. So, someone had to go hard code the typo into the code to make that work instead of just fixing the typo, which, my OCD would be raging at that. But whatever, teach their own. So just an example of some of the little things. So we've got the torso accessories. That's where you can go in, and I've tried to filter this down to where it made sense. So it's the items that are the secondary item that should work with the models that you have available. And then I have the torso extra, which are basically just like all the add-ons, all the extras, scarves, here's a machete that can go on your back, which I love, little details like that. So now this guy is looking pretty robust for an NPC character. This would be like a boss. We hit save, immediately get our model file, set this up in the presets. Here's my new boss fight. This guy loads in, custom character, done. Sadly, I don't think that would actually go too well with this one because, again, of the clipping issue. I think the issue that's going to happen is because of the clipping issue, some of his materials are actually going to clip through walls and that kind of thing. So immediately, this guy would not be my first choice for doing an NPC character. So this could be a player. So now we have a player that we can save and we can go play as this guy in the game. In the future, what I'm also looking at doing is actually setting up my new custom skill system. So for those of you guys that are not aware, I did go write a complete maniac psychopath skill system that actually slows your character down when you put on heavy armor, medium armor, light armor, no armor, that actually, so that you feel that if you jump into water, you can't swim if you get heavy armor on, that kind of thing. I am looking in the future of trying to take certain models that are getting exported from the game and associating skill with certain models, so that the end result of this would be is that if you got some heavy mail on your character, that was a challenge that I was faced with creating the concept of clothing versus the concept of armor, is that if you're putting armor on your body, who wants to actually wear a bunch of armor that doesn't actually work? And then I'm going to actually look over and just make sure I don't miss any questions here. If you guys are asking questions, hey, hey Flames, hey Sex, did I say that right? The mouse, man, you guys, you're legendary for your response time. I don't know what you do, man, but that's some epic emojis. Flames, good to have you on here. Henrol, it's good to see you, man. Eric, thank you for being here. Quartermaster, good to see you guys. Let me read really quick. Do you have the release of the source for this mod, or do you do Patreon only? If you let me know, I'd love to take a look at the code and learn new stuff. So all of this is going to be open source. Everything is currently available through the GitHub resource. So this is my fun. Like I said, this is like day 8 of my little hackathon. It's just a little flex that I'm doing to get back into Unity. And so I'm having fun doing it. But all of this is available on GitHub. If you look me up on GitHub, you should be able to then go to my repos and find the Infinity Designer and pull everything down. So the way I'm doing this is I'm setting it up to where none of their code is getting released. So nothing they did is getting added to the Git repo. So that being said, you can pull the entire project. You can pull, all the files and get all the scenes and the materials and all that good stuff. It won't have any models. It won't have any textures. It will only have the materials. So that being said, if you extract everything, and I will be releasing some of the other things. My God, I wrote Blender scripts. I wrote all sorts of things to make this more automated. Again, the theme here is as little work as possible so that I can move fast. But I will be releasing that stuff in the future as well so that you can churn out all of these models and churn out all of these textures. I'm kind of, again, I won't dive too far into it, but I actually had to do something with AI to actually go heal all of their normal maps. And so if this video is seen by Techland, or if you guys happen to talk to a Techland representative, or you happen to know the answer, please let me know why the hell so many of their normal maps are damaged on their red. I think it's on their red and green. They're just unusable. I basically had to use a clever way to get AI to go and heal thousands of files to get this result. And so, Henrol, let me send you a link actually. So I'm pretty sure it's Doc Haskins on there. I've been using it officially for work as well. So it's Doc Haskins, Haskins. Let me just send you a link here. And actually, I think there might be a link here on the YouTube channel as well. Hey, Isaac. All right, so moving forward from players. So this is the first part for a player. Kind of the idea is that if you wanted to create a player that could then be augmented with all the other code. Okay. Sneed, I see your comment. So far I haven't had any issue with the diffuse textures. They've been okay for the most part, and the rough maps seem to be okay. It was those normal maps that coming out of the engine that were just absolutely trashed. I don't know why that was, but if I go over here and just pull up any normal, I can show you guys what the hell I'm talking about really quick. Raise your hand if you love Windows search as much as I do. For any of you guys who use this stuff way too much and you're not aware of it, there's this program called Everything. That's what I actually use because nobody has time to wait for Windows to catch the hell up. Let me see if I can find a good example here. There's a little bit. So if you guys are seeing this, basically, this is what I'm referring to, is that on this texture, you probably have like a smooth edge here. If you go to your channels, you go to the red, there's this tearing crap that I don't know where that came from. And then if we go to the red, you can see that there's some here as well. So I actually wrote a way to batch all of the normal maps and heal them using AI. Thanks AI. But they've been a big component of helping save this because what the hell? I don't like. It's not even usable. I don't know if that's an extraction issue or like. There's no way that they're using it with that information. It's not dirt. It's not anything interesting. It's literally tearing for no reason. It's bad stuff. But if you look at like faces, for example, they're unusable. Let me scroll down here really quickly to any of these faces and pull up this normal map. Like the tearing is so bad, like the amount of, pixelization that's happening or whatever the hell is happening to the actual map was so extreme that when you actually loaded it into this software, it was practically useless because you end up with what I thought at first, like, oh, this will just look like dirt or something, and who cares? No, it was unusable. So I thought that was my first barrier of thinking maybe I wouldn't actually be able to do this project after all, was just looking at the normal maps. But once again, thanks AI, because I wasn't about to go manually fix all of those files. So anyway, the idea here is let's switch some of the things here so you guys can kind of get the idea, the gist of once this releases and it's actually a tool for creating a new character. I always have to kind of find them on the list here. Where's my pilgrim outfit? There it is. All right, to be a good pilgrim. Let's see, we'll just give him some random legs. Something with shoes. There we go. All right. And then we'll go into the accessories. We'll turn that off. And we'll leave the rest of it because that looks pretty good. And let's head up to the helmet or the hat really quick. And we'll take this off. We'll give him a nice witch hat instead. And let's say I want to go in there and make this something that every player can immediately go and create a new guy and go and join the game. The idea is that I'm setting these sliders up to where you can use data from each one, so from each category. So let's switch over to the mail list, which is much longer. There's way more things in the code for non-player characters. And that was kind of my original big question mark, is what the hell? But if we could fix that material issue, all of this would be immediately available to the public or to the players. So the idea here is that once we load this, we go over here to body, and then we can add whatever head we want. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different things you can do here, and by that I mean, check this out. This is my new favorite thing. Again, this is something I solved for today. We're going to get rid of this facial hair because there's way more of it everywhere. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this hat too. It's kind of in my way for my point here. So if we head back over here, let's go back to head. This is what we're working on. And so I wrote this code today that goes and gets all the variations. So inside the files, there are so many different variations that I've made, but then are also available just through the code. And once I actually go in here and create the variation creating tool, where you could actually change the diffuse maps, the normal maps, rough maps, specular maps, the emissive map, you could go in there and change the materials to whatever you want. Once you go in there and you add that level of variation, now you're looking at millions of different things that you could do with different characters inside the game. Exponential growth here on all the different things, all the different variations and choices and different cool things you could add. But kind of the idea is I wanted to be able to give the players something that they can go in here and kind of define for themselves what their actual look is and who they want to play as inside the game. If you guys are aware of how to do it, I am looking for feedback from you guys to do a silent protagonist mod that will pair with this, because we don't just have males, we also have females. And I've already tested all of this and got everything working in the code as is. Currently in I Am Legion, you can play as females in the code as well. But this all works pretty seamlessly for females as well. So if we could get a silent protagonist mod set up, then it wouldn't be a problem. We could actually go in here and have all sorts of different players that could be created very quickly without the unimmersive Aiden voice kind of jarring them back to the reality. So what I've tried to do is similar to other games. I've tried to set this up to where you can have multiple hair layers. So I've actually got currently 4 different sliders here. So the idea is you can find different different hairs and mix and match as you go. But then the cool part is that for most of these, I haven't gone and tested them all out. But for most of these, you'll also be able to very easily add color changes as well. So that's something that I haven't written into the code yet. I've been trying to get everything else working, but if you wanted in the future to go and actually add different colors, it will be limited because what's in the game is currently limited. And as we start to figure out ways to add new custom textures to the game, that will get more and more opportunities for more variation inside the game. So we'll have to see what comes here over the next year. Henril had a quick question. Any tips to deal with procrastination? Find something you really enjoy doing. I don't know if that's way too cheesy, but if you find a project that you really just geek out over, then, it's really kind of up to you to get inside and start. Determination is probably the biggest thing when dealing with Unity or dealing with any type of code that I've ever worked with, is the determination to just continue to mess around with it until you get it working how you want it to work. If you let it defeat you very quickly, then you'll never know what will come of that. So I don't know if that's motivational or not, but it's definitely been something that depending on the jobs you've had previously, you can often find things that are better than some of the other jobs you can find out there, if you get my meaning there. Let's go ahead and pull off some of these things that are player specific so that you guys can start to see some of the other things. Like I said, the player category is almost as limited as the kids category in the sense that they really didn't add a lot of kids either to the code. So let's head over, now that we're back to empty, let's actually head over and we will actually make a cool looking female really quick. So let's find a good head. And early on with playing with these materials, I made it to where you can switch between night and day while you're doing this. And I found, especially when messing around with the infected, that is a lot of fun when you're playing around on here. But so let's find. Right now I've got this set up to where the eye color and everything is kind of just being set by the variation, but you can also go in here and here in the future you'll be able to adjust the eyes as well. So if you want to change your eye color, you can do so. Had a rough day, female. All right, let's go with her. And let's actually just keep it on this one. And I did make it to where you could also put facial hair if you wanted to. Player's choice, whatever they want. I'm also excited about once this is set up in the future. I don't know how many other games you played where the modding community goes nuts on creating different hair textures and different hair models and stuff like that, adding hair highlights, all that good stuff. But here in the future, there could be a lot of fun different variations that you could get for your characters just based on people's creativity. So we're going to make her a little post-apocalyptic. She's having a bad hair day. She's definitely not run a comb through that in a while. And then let's get our hands. And we'll go full. I think we'll try to go as full body as possible here. And then let's also give her a tattoo. Cool, I like it. All right, and then let's go over here to body. And I've actually, one of the things I was trying to do with the mod was trying to go through and create all the different pouches and backpacks and stuff like that, and actually have those to where they could be found in the game, so where your carry weight would be impacted by the different items that you carried. So if you got a backpack, like for example this one, you could actually have more, you could carry more in the game. And so again, based on skills, you could easily set this up to where, based on what you create, if I write the code into where it detects this model, you could actually apply a skill that gives you extra carry weight because you're carrying that backpack on your player, something like that. So let's go and give her kind of a, call it a cape, but essentially I've got a whole list of different things in here that go around the neck or over the head. Let's see. And as you can see, there's actually quite a lot of variation built into this already without actually, by that I don't mean just the variation slider, I mean just the amount of models that are available that could be worn. And as I mentioned earlier, I haven't actually gone through, I just wrote the code for variation, so I haven't actually gone through here and tried all the different ones to determine which ones are built in. But anyway, we'll continue onward. Ooh, this like fur, sassy. This is another, so I'll show you guys kind of my process here. So essentially the shader is responsible for separating this out and actually going in here and setting this up to where the transparency is there. I'll just show you guys what I'm having to do to quickly solve for this. So essentially I just go in, I find the texture that it's referencing. We'll drag this into Photoshop here. And then if it has a clip, then I use a clip. If it doesn't have a clip, so there's actually a CLP in here, and then there's not a CLP, so I can't use that. But essentially the idea here is we can just go in and create more contrast here. For this one, we'll change the levels here a little bit to where it kind of gets rid of some of those different ranges. Set it to grayscale as well. And I usually don't go through all this trouble, but I think this is going to be a pretty cool effect once I'm done here. All right, and so then we do a select, color range, add a little blur here. And it's obviously better if they've added a clipping mask because you can actually stick with how they want it to clip. But and then also my custom shader does a lot of that. But for some of these, it helps to just go ahead and save time by adding the transparency layers. So we'll go ahead and select the original texture. This is our little end result here. Go ahead and remove whatever that is. Save this in. And then we end up with this. And if we go back, and we will add the transparency layer. And then we need to go to the material. So we go to the shawl, and we set this to transparent. And also we will set this over to my custom shader, do clothing. And turn on alpha clipping. It's exciting stuff, I know, but you know, it's been it's been a challenge getting all this hooked up, and so it's so nice to finally see all this kind of come together, to be honest. But so let's see here. Oh, actually, you know what? This needs to be set to my decal instead. And then we'll add some transparent filtering there. And do back then front, and we'll also do double-sided. Go. So then when we're back in the game, we actually have a nice little fur thing here. And I know that that was a lot of work for that, but that's what I'm doing, going through. And again, that won't be exact to how it looks inside the game. I'm sure it'll probably look better in the game based on how they have their rendering engine set up. But kind of the idea is, again, approximate alignment to how they have it in the game, because it doesn't matter actually what it looks like in my editor, it matters what it looks like in the game. As you can see here, there's quite the long list of different torsos. And for the females, what I've done is I've basically set up the code to where it combines all of the available male torsos with the female torsos. You could set it up to where it only does the female torsos. I might add that as like a feature in the future to where you can press a button and it will it'll combine the different sliders and make this a little bit easier. But kind of the thought here is that having a female player, most of the game's models were not designed for females, but they could still work depending on, again, how much time you want to sit here and play with the sliders to kind of dial in your character how you want it. Oh, let's give her this look. That's excellent. And so depending on how you want to dial in your shape or your different pieces, you can kind of decide if you want to use male or female torso pieces. But so then we can go in here and set up some accessories. These are also pulled from, oh, there's a face that got in there. That's fun. So one of the things that I've kind of slowed down on going and creating the images of all these different items so that you're using images rather than these sliders is because once I realized actually how much content is available inside the code, I got a little concerned about going in there and trying to write trying to do images for all of these different things, because I'm going to have to essentially figure out how users want to interact with this amount of data so that it doesn't become annoying or overwhelming at the amount of options, but rather becomes something that's exciting to actually go scroll through all the different options, which is a fun UX challenge. Can be. Okay. And we can even add things like glasses. So that was another one. There's all this headwear inside the game that you could never get access to for whatever reason. So I often have wanted to put these on the different characters that I've added to the game just because, but I haven't yet. So we're going to give her kind of like this like post-apocalyptic welding mask for now. Maybe we'll go, yeah, something like that. She's a techie. Let's see if that has variation. Nope. So the gloves should be actually set up to where they should only be female gloves, but I'm noticing that there's a difference here between the distance. So I think this did actually get combined with the male ones for whatever reason. So I'll have to resolve that. Oh, you could kind of add like, oh, the different skin color. So for each one of these, there should also be the ability to change your ethnicity. So for the different hands that you select, you should be able to actually, yeah, go set your ethnicity as well. Let's see if there's a hat that kind of fits on here without messing up all the hair layers. Oh, there's another fur. No, I think we'll have to do a helmet with her, I think. So let's move onward. Let's go and say legs. These have actually been the most frustrating in the game so far because I feel like they actually only made like a total of maybe 16 different legs throughout the game, and then use the same materials for the humans over and over and over and over again. Or maybe, I apologize, they only made 16 materials for the legs throughout the game, and then they're referencing it somewhere that I haven't seen. And actually, it's very difficult to actually figure out what the correct materials are. So I've had to basically guesstimate because none of the naming conventions give it away. So you just kind of have to guess at what those are. If you wouldn't go in here and give her, so I've got a pretty long list. So 439 missing materials in the time that we've been working on her so far. So a lot of this will be going in here and obviously just adding the missing materials so that you get a little bit less of the white material. And as you can see, most of these are meant for the guys, not for the girls. So there's that little bit of gap there. And as I mentioned earlier on the call, I am trying to set up a dynamic boning system for the skeleton and the mount point for all these different models so that you'll be able to actually see where they'll go based on the actual model, which is what they're doing in the game. So there'll be less of that offset. But again, in here, it's just kind of meant to roughly approximate. I even found, it was funny, there were rings, but there were only male rings. There wasn't a single female ring in the game. Not sure I understand that one, but and then you can also add shoes. So if you happen to get pants that do not have the different shoes, you can actually add those yourselves. And then if you want to add something like sleeves, I also have that in here as well. So if you want to go in here and add for any model, if you find a sleeve or a different accessory on the arms that you like. And then for most of these, you're probably going to just want to change the arm model based on that, so that you'll be able to go in there and set up the clipping a little bit better, just because I'm sure randomly you'll start to get clipping coming through from these longer arms. So for example, we could go back over to hands, and I think this is actually one of the shorter hands. And so if we go back to sleeves, nope, it's not. So hands, there we go. So again, a lot of this is going to be about trying to ease up some of the UI to make this a little bit more fun for people to go and set all this up, so it's a little less taxing for the player to go and design a different person. But I think the exciting part is that, again, not to harp on this too much, but because this system is data driven, all of this can be output into a JSON that could be immediately shared with others. All you need is a screenshot to kind of represent it. So if you can imagine, you hit save, it says take a picture, so you could actually pose your character how you wanted them to. Take a photo, hit share, add it to a repository online. So for anybody that's new coming to it, they could actually just go to the store and see which ones are available on the store. Free store, online community hub. Store is not a good one. Online community hub for the different characters. And then you could go and actually just find this character and hit download and then hit load, and it would immediately go and set all of these different sliders to the different things that they needed. So if you just wanted to start with this as a baseline, so you didn't even have to go and manually tick up all these different things or load only just this model, kind of the whole point here is that you'd be able to get in as much variation as you would like. And so it's less hard-coded, which really makes it kind of the whole point. So on to the infected and the kid models, I guess. Well, actually, I didn't get to the armor yet. I apologize. Let's see. We have our extras, so let's actually go over here to armor. And I have not set up all the leg armor yet, but I do actually have most of the helmets set up in here with their variations. A lot of them have variations based on the storyline, which is exciting because you end up with little variations that you only saw once somewhere in the story. You were like, oh, that was a pretty cool outfit or armor. You could actually go play as that. It's actually a kind of a fun combination. And for whatever reason, so the motorcycle, I'm really curious to know the backstory behind the motorcycle, because the motorcycle that was released, I noticed that there's all this different code for the motorcycle helmets in the game. There's like the most variation is for this freaking motorcycle helmet. The glass is gone inside the base game. Don't know why the glass disappeared from this, but then also the materials that I pulled out that the names are correct are not the right textures. And so I don't know if they injected like an add-on that actually replaces that in the code and it's somewhere else. But I'm really curious about the backstory with that stupid helmet, because I wasted a good amount of time trying to find the correct texture for it. Not yet. That's actually kind of fun. All right, actually I'm going to pull the welding goggles off. I'm going to actually switch out to this pair, kind of like that. And then for torso armor, let's see what we got here. Interesting. I know that there's actually several variations for these different ones for the player, and I know that there's variations for these in the code, but looks like some of these maybe aren't fully set up yet, or maybe the variations are specific to other pieces. There's also some models that I know will not properly bind to the player skin or skeleton. So ones like this one, so far, it may work now. That one does not properly bind to the player. So I could never do anything with it as far as like actual loot that you could go find. But this one looks pretty good. We'll make her part of the 404. Then you can go in here and select the different lower lefts and the lower rights. So I've got several different pieces that I found that are pretty fun. And once once the things release, once the application is actually released, I'll have these set up to where you'll be able to go and set up all the different armor pieces specific to every single piece. So there's a lot of different pieces for armor in the game that I'm going to try to actually make that a little bit more robust so that you can go set these up how you want them. And kind of a teaser, and what I'm excited about is that I actually figured out how to change the color on a lot of these pieces in the actual game. So in theory, once all of this is set up with a nice interface to make doing so actually fun, you could very quickly go see what the different colors would look like on your different armors or player, kind of based on what you're feeling. It's interesting that one piece, for whatever reason, the female arms, move back further than most of these armor pieces go to. So there's this little gap right here. The bulky pieces seem to hide it better. All right. So this would be an example of our female. Like I said, I'm still working on the leg armors. Most of them are set up properly. It's just the actual parsing code, sorting them all out, that I haven't gone through the list of actually filtering down all the different individual pieces for that yet. So that will be coming soon. From here, you could actually go and I think it'd be easier to just hit stop and start again. But you can also see for creating kids or creating different volatiles or creating different infected. In the future, this will be a lot easier. And something that I was also hard coding in the game was the different biters and the different special infected. Here in the future, this will be much easier, kind of based on how much time you have to select the different options and then add it to the game. So let's see if we go, they even have like different bags and stuff, which is fun. They have their own inventory items or their own accessories. And again, this will probably be the, one of the ones that I ensure that it all carries over so that you could go and make whatever variations of different guys you wanted. But here's our different ones. And if we switch to dark, you can actually see the effect a little bit better here. Let's get the funny looking backpack off its back. As you select, you can kind of see the different glow effects. Which I really enjoy, the fact that it's not just about picking your character in the daytime, it's also picking your character at night. And then I gave them, for their facial hair, they have jaws, so there's different jaws in here. I think that really only works for the Banshee, though. So let's see, kind of to put this to the test. And I don't know if the mount points could be adjusted. I've tried doing it with the inventory items, but that hasn't worked so far. But technically, if you get these close enough, you could add them however you wanted to. So one of the ones I'm excited to try this with is actually the Screamer, because there is only one variation of the Screamer right now, unless you play the mod. And then I've got basically where I've used other models, and I'm calling them Screamers because they have the effects. But I would actually like to go in here and create different Screamers that kind of help give some backstory to, you know, what happened to them or where they came from. I like that. And I haven't finished sorting all of the different ones for the infected yet either. So, like for example, I mean, it's close. Like it's not perfect, but if you can forgive the clipping, you know, there's probably several things in here. Ooh, do something like that. That's kind of sinister. There's probably some blends here that you could do to where you could find ones that actually look pretty damn good. And I'm guessing most of these won't work. I mean, you can make like a screamer who's like bundled up. So the screamer who died, he was cold when he died. But again, something I mentioned earlier, if you switch to any of the other categories, so if we switch to the other category, if we're making an NPC character, it doesn't really matter about the clipping issue. If we're making a player, then we have to care a little bit because of how the code actually sets up with the clipping. But as you can see, now that we selected, you know, male, we can actually go in here and select any torso that's in the game and try. Oh, there we go. See? Look how perfect that is. That's a boss. So you could go and create whatever variation you wanted for your screamer. Let's go back here and grab some legs. But it's got to be like, the legs have to be like messed up, like that. We'll find them all the way up. Like that. That's a boss. Starting to lose a lot of people with this character creation thing. Anyway, I promise you, the goal here is to try to find good combinations of models that would have taken a long time to try to piece all of these things together inside the text. But visualization is key to being able to very quickly go and create new concepts. And so using something like this, you could very easily go and create a armored screamer. So if we went in here and actually said, let me try to find the chest of the screamer really quick. I don't know if I've actually ever seen it show up in the list. They must have some specific name for it. I'll cheat. Say screamer. Yeah, so that's why. It's just literally called screamer. So then let's go in here and say hands. We'll turn those off. So this is the screamer model. And so if we wanted to go and create a variant of this model, you could go in here and so if we go back here to human, then you could actually do all sorts of things very quickly. And I guess that's the whole thing, right, is finding that balance of where it doesn't make them look too cheesy. Obviously, if you pull the fear factor out of it by making a bunch of human-looking guys, it's not as intense. But you know, who knows what kind of combinations? I mean, that actually looks pretty good. Who knows what kind of combinations you could come up with in here to create some new content for the players. Kind of just the goal is taking the first step to just kind of say, you know, what can we get access to, and then what can we create very quickly without having to kill an entire week writing the code. It's kind of cool. For anybody watching, do you guys have any requests or anything you'd like me to try to put together and see what we can create while I got you on the line? Let's see if we go in here, we'll remove this guy. Let's go back, say, I know for me, so I think I mentioned it earlier, one of the things I'll be creating soon is the concept of creating uniforms so that you can go and load in an entire uniform. So that way there is that's kind of cool. Thought that might work. Because that way you can still kind of see, yeah, you can still kind of see the glow. But once you have the concept of uniforms, again, the idea here is that if we drag all of these back down, and we wanted to go and create variations very quickly, when we're specifically talking like PK. Hey, Xrin? Zyron? Sorry if I messed that up. Thanks for joining the stream. Let's see, you asked for bombers. Let's see, they actually do have, in the code, they've got this guy. I don't know if he can actually be skinned. That's the issue, is that they created a bunch of them that are essentially static meshes. By that I mean they're, for them being dead. So you find a bunch of these in the code, and you would hope you could turn these guys on. So I did set this up to where you could do something like this. The hard part will be making sure that this binds properly to a skeleton and actually runs around the world correctly. But they do have several models for the bomber that I guess we'll call him Boomer. But I know he's not as, I know that the guts thing, and I know a lot of players wanted to see the guts come back. They really went for a more glowy infected. I will mention, though, that once we get custom textures set up easier in the code, this would be very easy to try to convert some of this to gore instead of bubbles. So like actually going in here, and that, I mean, it's a blank canvas for an artist to go in there and actually set up whatever texture they want right there to get a little bit closer to the original ones. Let's get rid of these. Oh, I think it's where it's still in my scene here. Because I think with the infected, probably the biggest challenge I found with the infected is that they essentially created single meshes for everything. In the code, you can find things like their heads and that kind of thing, but in the actual game, ooh, that's kind of fun. In the game, there's actually only like one single mesh, and so that's again where the combination of these sliders or the different pieces, the accessories, kind of start to lend towards the story of these guys in lieu of being able to add our own infected. Because if all you have is a single mesh to work with, there's really not much you can do there, especially if they didn't add any form of variation. Now, hang on. Oh, yeah, here we go. Here's the one this one is like off in the distance, but you can see where they left in the guts from the first, or similar to the first. And so they do have kind of some, I guess, maybe early models that they were setting up to do this, and then they pivoted I know I haven't seen this guy in the game. If you have, please let me know that I'm an idiot. But I don't remember seeing the intestines or anything in the actual game code, or not the game code, but in the actual game itself. There we go. There's bubbles like that. I mean, and really quickly, all I have to do is, I'm sitting here going like, is this different? Again, this is the reason for the model viewer. So all we have to do is switch over to the model viewer really quick, and let's see what models they're calling in the JSON. So if we go here and say Screamer, it's not Screamer, it's a Suicider. Yeah, so there's the first one. Let's unload, and here's the second one. So they do have this guy. I'm not really sure if I remember seeing this guy too much in there though. I was just about to look up. I got slightly distracted there. I apologize. Basically, all we have to do is go over here to our presets. Logic, human, infected. Am I missing it? Model. I think it's because they have them in the viz. So they do have a tier 1 and then a tier 2. So in the code, they've got this one set as the first one that you encounter. And then they've got it set up to where this is the second one that you encounter. So it's been a minute since I've looked at those, but that is how it's set up. So kind of what I'm hoping for here in the future is actually going and creating your own variations of these guys. So for example, we can't get that screaming face, but technically we can get the goon's screaming face. Or the demolishers, I guess. So this guy. And then if we want to go and create, let's see like what actually fits on him. I guess technically you could put pretty much any different one and then put the guts on there. Let me see if we can get the guts back in here. It's one of these. It's like that one. So technically, let's see how bad this is. Technically, you could find other, like there's going to be the actual obese clothing for, and I hate to call it that, but that is actually what it's called in the code. Is they have an entire line of clothing and stuff for an obese man, and so you could technically go in here and grab that. I think that's one of them. Yeah. And do something like that, which doesn't look too bad. work with what you got kind of thing. Let's see what other heads we got here. I think the issue I have here is that the emissive is not popping on this or on. I'm not sure which. I think it's because the emissive is just super, they just have it super low, so it just kind of slightly glows. This would have the explosive effect because they basically, that's all hard coded. So if you set this guy up right with their attack, then this guy could come running at you and then blow up. So if you wanted to go and like even make this guy, now let's try really quick and say, you know, can we get? I think he's all one piece. I don't think there is like actually a head or a head only for the exploder. Oh, that's because I set, well dang, it's because I was setting this. Let's go back and we'll just use this as an example, and then let's go back to here, and if we go to this one, does it have, well, I mean, I can always add it, but essentially it's just going to be the suicider. And does he have a head? He does not have a head, so he's just all one piece. So it would be like this. So I don't think that you could actually find I doubt that there is a torso for humans that would actually wrap this. But what you could potentially do, again, I don't know if it adds any value, is do what I've been wanting to do for a while, and actually go write PK versions and different variations. Oh, there's another boss. Put a skull mask on him. Like that. There we go. That's your next boss. That actually works pretty well. So sometimes I guess it doesn't have to be like super, you know, you don't have to do a lot for it. You could add just a couple of details, and it could probably do a lot for you. Just kind of falling off kind of look. I do wish I had my save button working so far, so I could just like save a couple of these guys that I make while I'm going through here. Oh, check that out. Actually really like that. It's its own form of skull face. Again, another boss. So I actually got pretty far on the boss code. So I actually had a whole module written for summoning bosses and having that that boss effect. And so I'm still looking into creating custom bosses that you fight in the game. But I really want to try to set it up to where it's like if you defeat them, they don't show up again. So you like actually defeat a boss. And so I'm still working on a good way to actually pull that off. But yeah, so you could actually go in here and create all sorts of fun ones. So you could even, yeah, those actually work. Like that. It's going to start to look kind of like the, I don't know if you guys saw 300, but he's kind of like the guy who lops off heads in 300. If only I could put blades on the end of his hands. So that's another, you know, so that's another infected variant that you could actually find. And I'm trying to set this up to where, you know, in the game there's only for the most part, there's like 2 different variations for most things, if not one. And it would be really nice to get to the point with the spawn code where you only ever have a chance of maybe encountering an alpha or one of these guys once. And so once you find this guy, you defeat him, you get some epic ass armor or something from him, and then you never see him again on the map. I also like I'm the kind of gameplay person where like if I only saw this guy one time ever, and then the next playthrough I never saw him again, and there's lots of these guys, so that's again the reason to write these kinds of tools, is that it doesn't become a chore to write these guys and then an update comes out and this whole thing breaks and now he's a ghost. A visible skeleton boss shows up and kills you and you're like, what the hell? Using this, I'm also trying to write code to where it basically detects when there's been a change. I'm going to try to write it to where it understands. So when I put out an update, it's able to understand based on the JSON data what the change is, the line change, and it's able to make the change in the code. And I'm going to try to set this up to where the whole idea behind this is that I'm going to be able to hit just generate. And so I can go in there. Someone was asking me on the oh, are you online? Hype, are you here? Hype Train Hobo was asking me a question on the I Am Legion server, where he was asking about making different variations of Aiden. And so if anybody wants to see kind of what the idea here, if we scroll back on some of these. Hey, Andrew. Thanks for joining, man. Hype Train Hobo. I like your name, by the way. So let's see. Which one is this? Okay. So we're all the way back. We go and we got to find the Aiden head, or I can just go in here and say, Aiden. Though I have to say, kind of the whole hope here is that nobody uses only just the Aiden head anymore. That everybody, starts to actually go and create all the different, new characters that you could create using this. Aiden's story could be taught or it could be told anytime. Go and create a new character. So here's the Aiden head. You can immediately have the different variations. So here's where I've actually created a viral using Aiden's head. So it pulled that in as one of my variations. So you have a couple of different little eyeballs here for him, but say we want to go and actually give him a new do. So we want to actually go and give him some unique looking hair. Oh, and another cool part is that you can't see it because it's actually being loaded onto all of the other model loaded characters. But kind of check this out. This is something written into the shader that you can't appreciate yet. But when you go in there to actually create new ones, once I create the variation system. This is something that will be much easier. So if you want to go in here and actually add a different shadow mask kind of for different hair or different facial features, you can immediately do that through the code to where you can actually add, it's the little things. I don't know if people actually, care about such things, but I know that there's not currently anything like that in the game to where you could actually go change these, but there's absolutely the ability to do this in the code and in the actual game. And so if you want to go actually give him a unique face, you could do that. So I haven't written the code for changing the eye color yet, but that'll be coming in the future. If you want to give him something like facial hair, I don't know why these all reset. I had all of these set up properly, but it looks like a lot of the facial hairs got lost again. So then we give him a new head, and then we give him something like some new hands. Maybe give him a tattoo if we want a tattoo on him. Give him a bite. Something took a chunk out of him. There we go. Do this like tribal wrap. Then we'll go in here and say torso. This is where, you know, go to town just making Aiden look however we want Aiden to look. Like I said, I mean, if you look at the slider, there's hundreds of options here for Aiden that are all immediately available in game. The challenge is that, again, Hype, you weren't on the line earlier, is that there's the player section. So maybe I should be doing this in the player section. So if you use the player section, there won't be the visual clipping. If you use the NPC section, there will be, you know, some clipping between the hands and the weapons and stuff like that on the different torsos until they actually fix that issue. So all of that's being set through the code, and I've asked Techland for support on that one, but I haven't heard anything back yet. But if we want to go create our own version of Aiden here that has his own cool stuff. Still give him the pilgrim armor, or pilgrim top underneath all of it. He's still a pilgrim through and through. Give him a necktie. Next, we'll also be trying to determine, so I'm looking to write all of this. Actually, I was just about to talk about that. So there's two different ways. There's basically skeleton replacement, so that you could set this up as your underneath skeleton so that you always get this look, and then you place stuff over it. So for example, if you wanted to go in here and remove a lot of the actual armors and that kind of thing, some of these bulkier items, say go lean here. So we give him like this, and we'll get rid of these sleeves. So say we want to give him a turtleneck, and then based on, you know, how you choose, once you inject this, so we'd probably get rid of the tattoo, as that's not going to show up right. But I did add the ability, so you can add decals. There's a shit ton of decals in the game. So like, for example, we grab this and then we go in here and say like variation. Can actually add a bunch of different ones in here. Most of these are supposed to be like chest tattoos and that kind of thing. So if you wanted to go in here and create this as a baseline, then you could set this up underneath all of your armor. And so every single time you put on a different armor, it would go over this. Or you could set it up to where it would be just an outfit. So you could go into your outfit selection in the stash, and you could actually just equip this and override your armor. So if you wanted to go create a full, you know, mocked up, you got the backpack, you got all the different, you know, utilities and things that you want to get, you could set that up as an outfit to override your clothing, and then whenever you want to turn that on, you just go flip the switch and turn on this look. And The best part of this is that all of this is multiplayer friendly. And so all of this will work with your buddies. And so if you want to go design a couple outfits and then play together on co-op, then you could actually start the game by designing your character first, and then once you've designed your character, you could load up the game and start playing. And each have your own little characters. Now, I will say that sadly, I wish that you could create it to where, like, for example, you only have a unique skin. So for my Patreon supporters, I was trying to think of a way of like releasing specific skins that like they have those skins. Nobody else gets those skins, and if they go into the game, then they can turn those on, and nobody else can see or nobody else can use those skins. I still have a way that I'm looking at doing that for the Patreon tiers, so that if you're playing co-op, everybody can still see your skin, but other people can't actually use it. And especially for those guys like Vic, who's been on my thing since the beginning days, and Andrew, I would like to get back to them by creating them something unique using this software. So most of it's been waiting for this opportunity to write something like this and kind of planning that out. But in the future, you could have that idea of like, you could put on a completely different outfit and then go do a tower raid with your buddy and have like your own YouTube streams. Best Gamer Ali could have his own look that he uses inside the game if he wanted to for all his videos. And that doesn't just have to be Best Gamer Ali. It could be anybody. Go have your own look and put it inside the game, and then you only play as that. That's kind of the idea. So currently 2 different options. So, again, override, so you always see it, or then underneath, which is typical of how I've been doing the content inside the mod, so that you can either override everything or you can wear it underneath your armor and everything. Personally, I like the idea of wearing this under my armor. So if I don't want to wear the pilgrim outfit, I can actually get my own unique look kind of going underneath everything. But if you wanted to, you could always, throw the pilgrim outfit on. And then, yeah, exactly. I actually have always been really curious. Techland puts out these trailers of showing, 4 players playing next to each other, and they're all Aidens. And I'm sitting there going like, man, like the possibilities of creating new characters in this game are endless. Like these artists went nuts on this content. There's so much stuff in the game, and I know I've said that a million times, but now luckily I can show you guys. And so if you wanted to create your own look and actually have your own look inside the game, you absolutely could. Again, like I was saying earlier, if you want to go and then create the concept of uniforms, then you kind of have a style or a look kind of picked out. If you're a peacekeeper or whatever, for me, once I set this up, I'll be generating entire factions using this code. And the idea is that if I wanted to go create an entire faction of pilgrims, all I have to do is go in here and change some of the basics now. So I'll need obviously a female, let's see, what is this, a sleeve? Let's see, leg accessories, sleeve, yeah. So if I want to actually go and create this same look or feel, but with a female character, then I can go find a outfit that works between both. And actually, I've got this one set up in the code to where you can currently play as a female inside of I Am Legion, and so I do know that this works. So I am interested that this there's this clipping inside the editor, and so in the game that actually works. So again, I'm going to try to align the skeletons a little bit more before I release. But then essentially, if you wanted to go create a bunch of them, and then also beautiful thing about data-driven systems is that if I wanted to go in there and create a random roll, which I plan on, you could go hit randomize and just generate endless varieties and even lock different selections. So if you want to go lock specific things and then just keep hitting roll, you could essentially make a character very quickly. And as I mentioned earlier, there'll be the online component of this as well. Anybody else want to see anything else created? I haven't actually shown the kids yet, so I guess I'll also show those. I haven't looked at the variations yet for that. So you can see your options immediately when you select the different ones, and it kind of lets you know which categories have the most and which ones have the least. And as you can see here, kids are fairly limited. But with variation, they might actually have a couple of different things. So when you're making kid zombies, this was actually one of my favorite things early on, was actually making the kid zombies. You can go in here and create these pretty quickly now. Before, this took me a little while, but this is actually going to be pretty quick here because there's not a lot of options with the poor kiddos. And obviously, I haven't gone through, so this is kind of what it started to look like when I first started on the different ones. So this is where a lot of materials are not hooked up, and the different components are not kind of put together yet. But once I iron out the different parts, you should end up with different variations that you get for the different pieces here. So we say legs. Yeah, nothing. Because they're over here erroring out where it's trying to add them, but there's not. Let's see. So then what's the other one? We got hands. Let's give them some hands. There we go. Get the undead kiddo. Put a decal on his shirt. There's a puppy. So Andrew, to answer your question about creating custom skins, so nothing. So I've been using everything is text, and so that's what I'm kind of demonstrating here. Is that this is all resources from the game. So I'm not creating anything. There's no custom code here, or there's no custom models, no custom textures. This is all game code, and so because of this will all go right back into Dying Light 2. Kid volatiles is a little bit harder. Ivan, thanks for still staying on the line. So with the volatiles, I guess while I got you on the line and show and tell here, volatiles have been kind of frustrating because volatiles are a single body, and that's it. So let's see here. Just throw all of them. Let's turn all this stuff back off really quick. I need like a quick reset switch, other than stopping the game, obviously. So even with this, even the head should actually, and I don't need to actually do it this way. I was dragging and dropping, but essentially, so in the game code, it's all one piece. Let's see, go here to head, say, and then I think the torso is incorrectly set up right now. But let me show you kind of what the idea here is, right? Is so. And actually, I don't need to do it this way. I can actually head over to the model loader scene and just kind of explain. So again, the model loader, for anybody just joining, is essentially just parsing JSON that I've generated, and it's loading in the references from the game. And in this case, it's also using the ones that I've created, unless I pulled them out. I did pull them out. So all I have to do is, and to kind of show you, I guess while I got you on the line, this is also kind of the benefit here, is that I output the data, and then once I output the data, essentially all I have to do is add the data to the engine. So it will load it in. And so once you build the application, the same is true. So everything is just coming from the JSON data. So if you create new variations of players or whatever you create, as long as you have that JSON data, it will load in immediately into the model viewer, which is kind of the whole concept. So if we go in here now, it should actually have all of the different volatiles, including my own. So here's the base volatile, right? So essentially they created the base volatile, which is a single mesh. It has multiple materials. It has a material for the arm, and this has actually been a big benefit of reverse engineering a lot of these characters, is because, for example, the corruptor might still be messed up. Go here to the corruptor. Nope. So, for example, this is a single texture, a single material applied 7 or 8 times for whatever stupid reason. So it's like he's got an arm here, he's got an arm here, he's got a neck, he's got a head, he's got pants, he's got a torso, he's got all these different pieces. I don't think he has a left leg and a right leg. I think that's all one block. And then the back, you can't actually disable the back. I tried that early on because this guy is super creepy. I actually really enjoy this model, how creepy this freaking model is. But he doesn't, you can't turn off the back, so sad day. Hey Esteban, thanks for joining. Hey Sakurovich, glad to see you're doing well, man. Welcome to the channel. So kind of the idea here is that if each piece has its own separate setup, but it's then using a single material, by doing something like this, and I know we're no longer in the character creator because all the infected are not currently in the character creator. This is just the model loader. Kind of the idea here is that once I set up the code to where you can get access to modifying the data or modifying the content and the materials, by only making adjustments that can be recreated inside the game. And that's really the key part, is I'm not trying to do anything that can't immediately then reverse back into the game. And so everything that you make a change to here could actually be changed. But here's an example. So like the EMS, the emissive, is actually just a referenced material being set by the dot model. So by doing something like this and writing that dot model file, you can actually essentially do this. So we say EMS, and we want to go in here and set a different EMS on this character. So we want to go and create a new variation of this guy. And actually, I guess I'll do this on this actual guy so it's a little bit faster here so you guys can see what I'm doing. Once you have access to that EMS file, and you want to set this EMS to whatever you want to set it to, the hard part will be going in here and finding ones that look right or look normal. So, I mean, even that looks pretty good. So I didn't have to actually change anything in the actual material to change what he looks like. I only had to change the EMS. And the best part is that in the day, you can't tell. So only at night, this character becomes something completely different or super creepy because you're like, what the hell is this? Well, that's kind of the idea behind the power of doing this code is that if you give the players access to the different EMS files, not all of them are going to work how you want. So all of them are not going to immediately have the effect that you're going for, but that's where it's up to creativity, right? Of saying like, okay, well, hang on, with enough time and playing around with the different values in here, what could I actually find and apply that starts to look normal? Because the last thing we want to do is go and create ones that look, you know, absolutely ridiculous or silly, unless that's the effect. That's been a balancing challenge for trying to create something like the effects in I Am Legion is that I don't want it to be too ridiculous. I want it to actually make players more freaked out by the creatures that are in the world. And so, yeah, that's kind of the concept is that you can actually go in here and apply a large scale of different ones. Like, for example, Ivan suggested the other day a volatile that could be electric, a blue volatile. Well, I can actually show you how I'm going to not only make that, I was going to make one for the ice as well, and he'll be coming out. I'll have a winter event coming out here soon. Which I'm super excited about, where you'll have actual biters and everything that look like they've been outside in the elements. The ones that are inside interiors will not be affected, so they'll actually be unfrozen, but the ones that are outside will have this frozen effect. And then I'll have new infected that are around the world that will have special attacks, and can't say special attacks, but will have special effects applied to them to make them look like they have been frozen in the ice, and they kind of are glowing from within. So say, for example, to show off the concept that I think Ivan wanted to see. So if we go here and say, probably not my chemical one, because the chemical one's got, the chemical one has a green texture, but this tyrant, right? So if we go in here to the tyrant, it's the same kind of idea really, is that you're going in here and modifying the EMS. That's pretty much all you're doing. You want everything else to kind of remain the same, but you want to try to create something new and interesting on the actual body. And I think it might, for this one, it might be easier to modify the full material so that it applies to, well, actually I can select all of them. We'll just select the arms and the legs here. Right? It's not going to let me apply it all at once, so I'll just have to reload it in. That's fine. So we say arm left, torso, legs. And then let's do something like, let's get that blue that I think you were going for, Ivan. Ooh, this one might be interesting. I guess I forgot the head as well. Scrap the head, EMS. So that might actually be a good one for like an electric effect, but let's try this guy. Too much. And again, you know, even having to open this, like I'm currently just opening this and setting it. If I set up the code correctly to where this is in its own little interface, and all you're doing is actually just selecting from a list of textures that are available, it actually would end up being simpler than this. You know, I'm actually spending more effort right now by creating or by clicking off each one. You could actually move faster by having these interfaces built in, but then if it's writing the data, you know, you can generate these new models very quickly, is at least the hope. What do these crystals look like on him? Yikes. I noticed their EMS, or their crystals are actually pretty low textured. Here's the Demolisher Electric. Yeah, it's like these are specific, you know, ones for these are ones specifically for the different effects and everything for the different enemies that they shoot at you. What if we do, I did notice, so there's some pretty wicked like player backpacks that they've added. Check this guy out. I've been curious about that. And again, this is where like it would take me hours to do this inside the actual game, versus what I can actually just sit here and do with my own engine. Is so much faster. I mean, obviously it took work to get here, but here soon we're all going to be able to create content pretty quickly. That it's kind of up to us how we want our different new characters to look. But I'm really hoping to write, not hoping, I'm going to write all the things to make it to where you can very easily inject this content back into the game, so that you can make these changes kind of on the fly and then go look at what they look like inside the game. These are like a couple of dots. Just end up with some random dots on them. But Ivan, I hope that answers your question about kind of the future there for creating the different ones, and then also creating different variations on them. Absolutely. But again, this is where the tools really lend to the practice of doing this really well. Thank you, dude. Glad you're okay. Thanks for joining, and thank you for posting that. Like I said, hey, this is what I was going to show you earlier. Um, Combining custom textures and custom meshes with this process. I was already going to reach out to Sneed, and I've set up the code to where the idea is that because all of it's being loaded dynamically at runtime, the idea is I'm going to write it to where there can be override packs. So if you go and you create custom textures, you create custom model variations of this, it can look for it, and immediately you can toggle between your custom ones and the ones that are in the base game. So if you want to generate content for the game, you could actually go generate it very quickly. And I know I missed a question earlier. I think, Andrew, you were asking about weapons. Oh, nope. Exron, it was you. Plans to let the program design weapons and armor. Yes. So that is the next step. First, I wanted to get the more complex one, which was all of the different people. Ooh, that's kind of cool. I wanted to get all of the different people working and all the materials working as expected inside the code. And then once I had all of this done, I wanted to switch over to the weapons, because my plan for the weapons is actually very different from my plan for the people, because you don't have access to the materials, so you can't set materials on the weapons. And so you're kind of limited there of what you can do. But as far as your ability to go create weapons, such as, I don't know if you ever saw my original program. Let's see here. So this was my armor designer way back. And I never ended up releasing this because I was learning a lot about Python at the time. But essentially, I think this one is GUI item creator.py, if it'll run. Yeah, there we go. So this was the early concept that I did a while back that was essentially doing the same thing. It was taking the JSON data and going and trying to give different options based on the JSON data. So essentially what I'm doing now. This obviously is a much better version of this, but kind of the idea is that each image was being dynamically generated from all of the different components being mashed together from the editor pictures that they had available that they released with the editor code. They were really ugly, super small scale, didn't like it at all, wasn't able to polish this very well. But the idea is that if you wanted to utilize OpenAI, this worked with OpenAI to write a name and a description for each one of these armor pieces. And I was doing a lot of code in the background along with writing custom skills to where it would generate a unique name and description for each piece, along with stats that were based on its category. And the end result of this is that I learned a lot. The end result of this was that I didn't like the interface. I didn't like necessarily how all this came together. But probably the biggest challenge is that people just didn't really respond to it. When I tried to talk to people about it, of using something like this to create the different ones. Probably my favorite thing about it is again, it's dynamically building everything, so it would actually go and you could pull the latest version of the game, and it would immediately import all of that data and allow you to generate armor based on the new stuff. So you didn't have to worry about your content becoming outdated. But for this, you could create a set. So you could actually, instead of having to go in here and manually create a different armor set for each individual one, you could go say create a set, and it would actually name them slightly different and give them different attributes based on their color and grade. Well, I'm going to take this concept and move it into the engine to where you're no longer having to look at a flat picture, as you've seen, I've already got all the armor, but I also have all of the weapons. They also have, they don't have the JSON data to assign their materials. So every single weapon has to be assigned with its appropriate material, which shouldn't be hard. I mean, I just have to write a script that basically goes and gets each one, and then also gets the variations. So each one's going to have a variation. The hard part is going to be actually taking this and then hooking the variation part of it back up to the engine, because they only have the skin concept, which is all behind closed doors, and so you can't actually get the kind of access to that I would like to. But kind of the idea here is I can apply, I think that's the right one. At least that's the name, or no, first person. But it's going to be a pain in the ass, I think, based on just this initial test to get it all hooked up. Yeah. So, I mean, it looks like I'm going to have to go set whatever material is on that top part there. But the idea is that you'll have an interface similar to the one that I already did, where it'll bring up an actual render of the weapon. You can give it a name, you can set its stats, you can set its physics effects, you can roll, different stats, that kind of thing. So that the idea here is that you could very easily go create variations of weapons that are in the game. But probably the biggest part is I'm going to try to set it up to where you can modify items that are already in the game. So if there's a weapon, which, by the way, guys, don't get me started on, a couple of people jumped into the server the other day, and I hadn't even looked in a while, but they were asking me about modifying some of the DLC, weapons that they added to the game, like Lucille and a couple of other ones. I started reviewing the code, like the damages and stuff that they set on those weapons, and I'm just saying, I'm glad I never paid any money for anything that they released, because I would be pretty pissed that I bought a bat for however much money that does less damage than Knuckles for whatever reason. It's mind-boggling. But kind of the idea is similar to this. You would be able to go and pick your weapon in the interface. You would actually be able to adjust all the stats, give it a name, give it a description, hit generate, and it would output immediately into the game again. And so you could load up and start playing with your new weapon. So if you wanted to make a baseball bat called Little Slugger that knocked people out of the map, do it very easily. But kind of the hope here is that I'm also hoping to add more realism to the game as far as the physics system go. They're a little wonky right now. You slap someone and they go reeling. And so I haven't gotten back to the physics effects, but I am hoping here in the future that with generating new content, we can add some of that realistic, that oomph, that impact with different weapons, and then also make it fun if we want to make some really fun weapons that knock things out of the park. But here in the future, especially with the armor, the plan is that, just so everybody's aware, you can create any one of these armors as a wearable inside the game. So if you wanted to go, and again, I don't know why Techland said you couldn't, because you absolutely can. If you wanted to go and create, where is this armor? This. If you want to go and grab this and, let's see, where's the sleeves? There it is. So let's say we wanted to create this. Yeah, so I actually, so sorry, Shakurovich asked a question. Yeah, so I had to write a custom shader for that. And I made a little joke the other day that for anybody that saw me on here about talking about writing my shader, this is what writing my shader would look like the other day, because they're so ugly. But I did manage to get the shader working that I have to go clean up. But essentially, for all the clothing, this is what my custom shader looks like using shader graph. Everything's related, everything's intermingled. But yes, it gets the index, and based on the index, it sets the gradient map, and it all works really well. The part that I have to set up is basically the slight offset for every single little piece of armor. Not all of them have kind of a global, so like for example with this one, not everything has a global setting, so I've set like a standard offset for the gradient that has to be adjusted. But it's also kind of cool because similar to how I was showing you guys the changes for the EMS, and adding new armors or adding new variants based on the gradient, the same is true of all future outfits for different bosses and that kind of thing that are using this system, because I actually, again, writing the shader, it gives you the ability to basically go in here and change the color. So in the future, same as I was showing setting the emissive, you can go in here and set color, and all of this immediately imports into the game. So for any color that you want to actually use, and I know that there's a slight burn effect where I'm in between on my, there's a perfect ratio for each one of these, and it's so time consuming sometimes to find where it's at. But the burn effect, you like find it, and then all of a sudden the burn effect just immediately falls away. So like that. So then from here, if you want to go in here and actually set the color, you could go set the color on any one of these, and this would work in the game. So for doing it for the player, no. And that's what I was going to mention a second ago, is that when it comes to what can be written for the player, they basically, every single one of these, back to my original point, is that every single one of these could be written into the game. So if I wanted to go and write this as a piece of armor that made you heavy, but it defended you against biters, chainmail, you could easily do that using a similar approach to what I was doing with this. This is essentially the same thing, is that you could apply a skill to it, protects you more, makes you heavier, makes you sink in water, does a great job defending against biters to bite your torso, right? So you could do all that and give it its own name and everything. The challenge is that you can't do texture changes. So as long as you're setting up the materials and everything as they are in the base game, you're good. And this tool will allow you to export that immediately. So I plan on creating the armor creator as well, because essentially all I need is an export button that goes and creates a armor piece the same way this did, to where if you hit export, it goes, it assigns the skill, it assigns everything, it writes the line, and it injects it into the inventory. And you're done. So that's all a possibility in the future. It's not a possibility, it's on the way. So weapons, armor, standby, lots of that coming in the future. And it'll actually be fun to do so. But once I add the social element to this, to where you could share this armor piece. So say, for example, you created this armor piece, you used it in your game, you didn't want anybody else to, you didn't inject it into like I Am Legion, I didn't release it, but you used it and you wanted to share it with somebody else. They could pull it, and then they could make a slight modification to it, or a slight change. They could add the helmet, to where if you get this piece of armor, you export on their version, you always get the helmet with it. You don't get pants, but this is a full set, so that way, you get all of it at the same time. So yeah, lots and lots and lots of things coming soon. I think the part that's going to be really fun is because now that I have a window into some of the things that are being created, you best believe there's going to be a Santa Claus boss. There's going to be, there's just going to be so many things that I'm going to do with the events for the game that I've wanted. That's why I've spent more time on the launcher, creating that ability to release those updates very quickly and do events and that kind of thing. Because having that idea of, doing something fun, like having all the goons actually have like samurai outfits and stuff like that. Ooh, there you go. And actually one of these is the So like, for example, where's the jack-o'-lantern or the scarecrow stuff? I was seeing him earlier. He looks like fun. Here we go. It's a boss. It's an enemy. Done. Next Halloween is going to be a lot of fun. Because, you know, it was something that I was seeing a lot in the lines of code, but until I was able to visualize, you know, what all could be done very quickly, you know, this is going to change things a lot as far as getting this content out to you guys a lot faster. But the quality of the content is about to go through the frickin' roof. Because like I was saying in an earlier stream, I was having to be so careful because it was a pain in the ass to go and fix all this stuff. And as I've mentioned on another stream the other day, they've now removed the syntax tools, the debugging tools from the game, so you don't actually get those debug errors anymore when you mess up your code. And so because of that, all the more reason to have, you know, things like this to make it easy to create content that the system is writing it, I'm not writing it, less human error goes into it, and so your output becomes a lot cleaner. Let's see if he's got some fun gloves. All right, guys, I think I'm getting ready to jump here. It's been 2.5 hours talking about this. As you guys can tell, I'm probably, or hopefully tell, I'm really excited about this next stage. I'm really excited to show you guys, you know, what I've been working on this week. This is day 8, and so, you know, who knows what we'll have at day 12. But next week, I'm going to be working on the export code. That's going to be the code that immediately gets all this content back in the game. Kind of the concept is hitting the save button, launching the game, and immediately being able to see your character there on the load screen, or, you know, being able to inject it as an outfit. And then onward from there is going to be the faction creator. I'm really excited about the concept of creating the companion creator. So when you're creating your story, if you're not playing co-op with other players, if you actually want to create a companion who's custom to your story, you can actually have a companion who comes on your journey throughout the game. But then also next week, I'm working on a dynamic skeleton system. So the skeleton will be able to automatically bind itself as it loads in here. It will actually attach to the full skeleton so that all the animations and everything work. But that will also help with the offsets. So there are slight offsets when it's loading in because it's just using the baked in data from the ASCII. Once it's bound to a skeleton, it'll be a lot easier to see, you know, what each piece will look like once it's loaded into the game. Unless you guys have any last questions for me, I'm calling it for the night. Going to enjoy the weekend, get away from this for a little bit. It's been a hackathon over here trying to get all this done. Just so you guys are aware, I will be releasing this as a test for free on my Patreon site. So as always, huge shout out to the people who have been supporting me through all these challenges. I will also have this for free on the Patreon. So if you want to download it, play around with it, let me know what, you know, was critically broken, what you hate, what you like. Happy to get the feedback early. All these things like the interfaces and all that will be changing over time. As I mentioned earlier in the stream, this was literally just to get all of this content visible so we could start modifying it and playing with it and see what it resulted in. And this is the result. So pretty happy so far. More coming. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Appreciate you. Happy gaming.